Did you know that heart disease is the leading cause of death among women over 65? And what's most concerning is that these conditions often develop silently, without clear symptoms, until they reach a more advanced stage. But here's the good news. Recent medical studies prove that up to 80% of heart problems can be prevented through simple changes in your daily diet. Today we're going to talk about 10 foods that cardiologists warn should be avoided or significantly reduced if you want to protect your heart and maintain the quality of life you deserve. Before we begin, it's essential to make it clear that this content is purely educational. Always consult your doctor or cardiologist before making any significant changes to your diet, especially if you already have a diagnosed heart condition or are taking medications. Each person is unique, and only a healthcare professional can assess your individual needs. Now, why is this topic so important specifically for women in your age group? After menopause, estrogen levels drop dramatically, and this hormone played a very important protective role for the heart. Research from the American Heart Association shows that the risk of heart attack in women increases significantly after age 60, reaching or even exceeding men's risk. Additionally, you who have lived so long know that the body changes over time. Metabolism slows down, blood pressure tends to rise, and the body processes fat and sugars differently. That's why foods that perhaps didn't cause problems when you were younger may now pose real risks to cardiovascular health. The first food on our list may surprise many of you because it's present daily on the tables of millions of people: processed meats. We're talking about hot dogs, sausages, ham, bologna, bacon, salami, and all those convenient deli meats that often save a quick snack. Doctors specializing in cardiology are categorical. These products are among the most dangerous for the hearts of senior women. But why? First, the absurd amount of sodium. A simple slice of ham can contain up to 400 milligrams of sodium, and you only need 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams per day total. Second, these meats contain chemical preservatives like nitrates and nitrites, which, according to research published in the Journal of the American Heart Association, are directly linked to increased blood pressure and hardening of arteries. Let me give you a practical example. Mary, a 72-year-old woman, had the habit of eating bread with bologna for breakfast and adding bacon to her beans at lunch. She couldn't understand why her blood pressure wouldn't go down, even though she was taking her medications correctly. When her cardiologist asked her to write down everything she ate for a week, they discovered that just from these two habits, she was consuming more than 2,000 milligrams of sodium before dinner, not counting the salt from other foods. By replacing these processed meats with shredded chicken breast and eggs, in 3 months, her blood pressure improved significantly, and she was even able to reduce the dosage of one of her medications, always under medical guidance, of course. So what should you do? Nutritionists specializing in senior health recommend replacing deli meats with more natural proteins. Cooked and shredded chicken breast can be seasoned and stored in the refrigerator for convenient snacks. Hard-boiled eggs are another excellent option. If you really miss the smoky flavor of bacon, there are natural seasonings that mimic that taste without the risks. The important thing is to understand that it's not about never eating processed meat again in your life, but rather transforming what was a daily habit into an occasional exception. The second food that cardiologists ask senior women to avoid is fried foods, especially those fried in reused oil or deep fried. French fries, fried chicken, donuts, fritters, these delicious treats that are part of our culture. The problem isn't just the amount of fat, but the type of fat that forms during high-temperature frying. Medical studies prove that when oil is heated above 350 degrees Fahrenheit, especially when it's reused, as happens in many kitchens and restaurants, toxic compounds called acrolein and aldehydes form that directly damage artery walls. For your heart, this means several bad things happening at once. First, these fats increase bad cholesterol, that LDL that sticks to arteries. Second, they decrease good cholesterol, HDL, which should be cleaning those arteries. Third, they cause inflammation, throughout the cardiovascular system. Researchers at Harvard University followed over 100,000 women for 25 years and discovered that those who ate fried foods regularly had a 56% higher risk of developing serious heart disease compared to those who avoided fried foods. Look, I'm not saying you can never eat French fries again. I'm talking about frequency and method. If you eat fried food 3 or 4 times a week, your heart is paying a high price. A 68-year-old client I know loved to make fried food at home every weekend and bought fried snacks at the bakery during the week. After her cholesterol skyrocketed and she had a scare with chest pain, she decided to make changes. She bought an air fryer and started baking snacks in the oven. At first, she found the different texture strange, but soon got used to it. 6 months later, in her blood tests, her cholesterol had improved so much that the doctor was impressed. Alternatives exist and are delicious. Potatoes can be baked in the oven with a drizzle of olive oil and become crispy. Chicken can be breaded with oats and baked instead of fried. Many vegetables are incredible when roasted, getting that crispy texture on the outside and soft inside. The secret is to experiment with new cooking methods. And if you really want to eat something fried occasionally, do it at home with fresh oil. Use controlled temperature, and most importantly, don't reuse that oil. Use it once and dispose of it properly. The third villain for the hearts of women your age is something we often don't realize how much we consume: refined sugar and sweets in general. Cake, cookies, chocolate, ice cream, pudding, that coffee with 2 teaspoons of sugar several times a day. Specialized cardiologists are very clear about this. Excess sugar is as dangerous for the heart as saturated fat, perhaps even more so. Why? When you consume excess sugar, especially refined sugar that has no fiber to slow absorption, there's a brutal spike in blood glucose. The pancreas needs to release a lot of insulin quickly to control this. Over time, this repeated cycle leads to insulin resistance, which is the first step toward type 2 diabetes. And what's the relationship between diabetes and heart? It's direct and dangerous. According to the American Diabetes Association, people with diabetes have 2 to 4 times more chances of developing cardiovascular disease. Excess sugar in the blood damages blood vessel walls, increases inflammation, raises triglycerides, and contributes to the formation of fatty plaques in arteries. Additionally, recent research shows that excess sugar directly increases blood pressure, even in people who don't have diabetes. Think about how many hidden sources of sugar exist in daily eating. That boxed juice that seems healthy can have 6 teaspoons of sugar. Fruit-flavored yogurt has more sugar than a piece of cake. Ketchup, industrialized tomato sauce, even some sandwich breads have added sugar. A 70-year-old woman I consulted thought she was taking care of herself because she didn't eat dessert, but she drank 3 coffees with sugar a day, ate cookies in the afternoon snack, and drank boxed juice at lunch. When we added everything up, she was consuming the equivalent of 15 teaspoons of sugar per day, 3 times more than recommended by the World Health Organization for her age. The good news is that your taste buds adapt. When you start reducing sugar gradually, after a few weeks, things that seemed normal before will taste excessively sweet. Start by cutting 1 spoon of sugar from your coffee, then gradually eliminate it completely. Replace cookies with fresh fruit. If you want something sweet after lunch, a small piece of dark chocolate with at least 70% cocoa is much better than milk chocolate. Doctors specialized in nutrition for seniors recommend that women over 65 consume no more than 5 teaspoons of added sugar per day, and ideally even less. The fourth food that deserves attention is white bread and refined grain products. White bread, crackers, white rice, regular pasta. Those products made with white flour that had all the fiber and nutrients removed. You might be wondering what's wrong with bread. I've eaten it my whole life. The problem is that refined grains behave almost like sugar in your body. They're quickly digested and cause those same dangerous spikes in blood glucose we just talked about. Beyond that, they offer almost nothing nutritionally. They're what doctors call empty calories. Clinical studies show that diets high in refined grains are associated with increased levels of inflammatory markers in the blood. This chronic inflammation is one of the main factors in developing atherosclerosis, that accumulation of plaques in arteries that can lead to heart attacks and strokes. Research published in the British Medical Journal followed over 137,000 people in 21 countries and found that high consumption of refined grains was associated with higher risk of cardiovascular disease and premature death. Here's something important that many women your age don't know. Whole grains have the opposite effect. They contain fiber that slows glucose absorption, provides B vitamins important for heart health, and contains minerals like magnesium that help regulate blood pressure. A woman I know, 67 years old, resisted changing her white bread for years. She said whole wheat bread was too heavy and didn't taste good. But when her doctor showed her the blood test results with high triglycerides and pre-diabetes, she decided to try. She started mixing half white bread and half whole wheat, gradually changing the proportion. Today she eats only whole wheat and says she can't go back because she feels the difference in her energy and digestion. The transition doesn't have to be radical. Start replacing one refined product at a time. Switch your white bread to whole wheat bread, but buy a good quality one that's soft and tasty. There are excellent whole grain breads on the market today. Replace white rice with brown rice or quinoa a few times a week. Try whole wheat pasta, which nowadays has much better texture than before. Oats are an excellent whole grain that cardiologists love to recommend because they also help lower cholesterol. The fifth food that cardiologists warn about is full-fat dairy products, especially whole milk, regular cheese, butter, and cream. Before you get worried, let me explain. Dairy isn't the enemy, but the amount of saturated fat in full-fat versions is problematic for women your age. Saturated fat, that type of fat that's solid at room temperature, directly increases LDL cholesterol, the bad kind that clogs arteries. Medical research consistently shows that replacing saturated fats with unsaturated fats reduces the risk of heart disease by up to 30%. The issue is that many women grew up in a time when whole milk was considered the healthiest, when butter was seen as natural and margarine as artificial. And it's true that natural is generally better. But when it comes to protecting your heart, the amount of saturated fat matters more than whether it's natural or not. A single tablespoon of butter contains 7 grams of saturated fat, and the American Heart Association recommends that women over 65 consume no more than 13 grams of saturated fat per day total. Let me share a real situation. Margaret, 73 years old, loved her morning coffee with whole milk and always had cheese with every meal. She used butter to cook. And in her bread, her cholesterol was high despite medication. When her cardiologist suggested switching to low-fat dairy, she was skeptical. She thought it would be tasteless and unsatisfying, but she tried anyway. She switched to 1% milk, started using low-fat cheese, and replaced butter with olive oil in cooking and a light margarine without trans fats for bread. After 4 months, her LDL cholesterol dropped 25 points without changing her medication dosage. She was amazed and admitted the taste difference was much smaller than she expected. What specialists recommend is simple. Choose 1%. Or skim milk instead of whole milk. Opt for reduced fat cheeses, which still have plenty of flavor but less saturated fat. Use olive oil for cooking instead of butter. If you really love butter and can't give it up completely, use it sparingly and only where the taste really matters to you. Greek yogurt is an excellent option because even the low-fat versions are creamy and satisfying. The key is balance and moderation, not total elimination. The sixth food on our list might come as a surprise to many of you: excess salt and high-sodium packaged foods. Now, you might be thinking, but I already heard about salt and high blood pressure. This isn't news. You're absolutely right. But what many senior women don't realize is just how much hidden sodium they're consuming from packaged and processed foods. Cardiologists estimate that up to 75% of the sodium in the average diet comes not from the salt shaker, but from prepared foods. We're talking about canned soups, frozen dinners, instant noodles, boxed seasonings, salad dressings, and even bread. Why is this such a critical issue for women your age? Research from the National Institutes of Health shows that as we age, our blood vessels become less flexible and our kidneys become less efficient at removing excess sodium. This means the same amount of salt that didn't affect you at 40 can significantly raise your blood pressure at 70. High blood pressure or hypertension is called the silent killer because it often has no symptoms while it's quietly damaging your heart, arteries, kidneys, and brain. Medical data shows that women over 65 who keep their sodium intake below 1,500 milligrams per day have substantially lower rates of heart attacks and strokes. Think about this scenario. Helen, a 69-year-old woman, thought she was doing everything right. She removed the salt shaker from her table and stopped adding salt to her cooking. But she was eating canned soup for lunch most days, using packaged seasoning mixes for her chicken, and having crackers as snacks. When her nutritionist asked her to track her sodium for a week, they discovered she was consuming over 3,500 milligrams daily, more than double the recommended amount. The canned soup alone had 800 milligrams per serving. The crackers had 200 milligrams per small serving. Those seasoning packets had 600 milligrams each. Once she switched to homemade soup frozen in portions, used fresh herbs and spices for seasoning, and chose low-sodium crackers, her blood pressure improved remarkably within 2 months. What can you do? Start reading nutrition labels religiously, focusing on the sodium content. Anything with more than 200 milligrams of sodium per serving is high. Cook more meals from scratch where you control the salt. Use herbs, spices, lemon juice, and vinegar to add flavor instead of salt. Fresh garlic, onion, basil, oregano, cumin, paprika. These all add wonderful flavor without any sodium. When you do use salt, use it wisely in cooking, where it enhances the overall dish rather than sprinkling it on food at the table. And look for products labeled low sodium or no salt added. The 7th food cardiologists want you to limit is alcohol, particularly more than 1 drink per day. This topic can be sensitive because you may have heard that red wine is good for the heart, or that moderate drinking has health benefits. The truth is more nuanced, especially for women in your age group. While some studies have suggested that very moderate alcohol consumption might have some cardiovascular benefits, more recent research shows that even moderate drinking increases risks for women over 65. Specialists from the American College of Cardiology now say that any potential benefits are outweighed by the risks. Here's what alcohol does to your aging cardiovascular system. First, it raises blood pressure. Even moderate amounts can increase blood pressure over time, and you already know how dangerous that is for your heart. Second, alcohol contains empty calories that contribute to weight gain, which is another risk factor for heart disease. A single glass of wine has about 120 calories, and many people pour more than the standard 5-ounce serving. Third, alcohol can interfere with heart medications. Many women your age take blood pressure medications, cholesterol medications, or blood thinners, and alcohol can interact dangerously with these drugs. Research published in the Journal of the American Heart Association found that women who consumed more than 1 drink daily had significantly higher rates of atrial fibrillation, an irregular heartbeat that can lead to strokes and heart failure. Additionally, alcohol can worsen other conditions common in senior women, such as osteoporosis, diabetes, and liver problems. Doctors specializing in geriatric medicine emphasize that the risks of alcohol increase with age because the body metabolizes it differently and becomes more sensitive to its effects. I know a woman named Patricia, 71 years old, who enjoyed 2 glasses of wine every evening. She thought it was relaxing and heard it was good for her heart. But her blood pressure kept creeping up despite medication, and she was gaining weight. Her cardiologist suggested she try limiting alcohol to 3 drinks per week instead of 14. She was reluctant at first because it was part of her evening routine. She found alternatives like sparkling water with fruit, herbal teas, and discovered she slept better without the wine. After 3 months, her blood pressure was more controlled. She lost 8 pounds, and she felt more energetic during the day. The recommendation from medical experts is clear. If you drink alcohol, Limit it to no more than one standard drink per day and consider having several alcohol-free days each week. A standard drink is 5 ounces of wine, 12 ounces of beer, or 1.5 ounces of spirits. If you don't currently drink, don't start for supposed health benefits, as the risks outweigh any potential advantages. And always talk to your doctor about whether alcohol is safe, given your specific health conditions and medications. The 8th food that needs to be limited is commercial baked goods and pastries. We're talking about donuts, muffins, croissants, Danish pastries, packaged cakes, and cookies from bakeries and stores. You might wonder why these are specifically called out when we already talked about sugar and refined flour. The reason is that commercial baked goods typically combine the worst of several worlds: refined flour, high sugar content, unhealthy fats including trans fats in some cases, and enormous portion sizes. Nutritionists who specialize in heart health call these perfect storms for your cardiovascular system. Let's look at what's really in that innocent-looking blueberry muffin from the coffee shop. It likely contains 400 to 600 calories, which might be a third of what you should eat in an entire day. It has 3 to 4 tablespoons of sugar, causing that dangerous blood sugar spike. It's made with refined white flour, offering 0 nutritional value. And it probably contains 3 to 4 tablespoons of butter or oil, much of it saturated fat. Studies by cardiologists show that regularly consuming these types of foods significantly increases your risk of weight gain, diabetes, high cholesterol, and ultimately heart disease. What makes this especially problematic for senior women is the portion distortion that has happened over the decades. Muffins used to be small, maybe 2 ounces. Now bakery muffins are often 5 to 6 ounces, triple the size. The same is true for cookies, scones, and other baked goods. Your generation might remember when a cookie was 2 inches across. Now they're often 4 or 5 inches and loaded with chocolate chips and other additions. Your body hasn't evolved to handle these mega portions, especially with a slower metabolism. Consider Elizabeth, 66 years old, who stopped at her favorite bakery every Saturday morning for a croissant and coffee, and often bought muffins for the week. She thought it was just a small treat, but each croissant had 300 calories and 18 grams of fat, mostly saturated. The muffins were even worse. Her cholesterol and blood sugar were both creeping up. When she replaced this habit with homemade oatmeal topped with fresh berries and a tablespoon of nuts, not only did her numbers improve, but she also found she had more sustained energy throughout the morning, instead of the crash that came after the pastry. What's the solution? If you love to bake, make healthier versions at home, using whole wheat flour, reducing sugar by 1/3 or half, using applesauce or mashed banana to replace some of the fat, and controlling portion sizes. There are wonderful recipes designed specifically for heart health that don't sacrifice taste. If you want something from a bakery occasionally, share it with someone or save half for another day. Better yet, satisfy your sweet tooth with naturally sweet foods like dates, fresh fruit, or a small piece of dark chocolate. The 9th food to limit or avoid is high-fat red meat, particularly fatty cuts like ribeye, T-bone, prime rib, and ground beef with high fat content. Again, this doesn't mean you can never eat red meat, but the frequency and type matter enormously for your heart health. Cardiologists point out that red meat, especially fatty cuts, is high in saturated fat and also contains a compound called L-carnitine that gut bacteria convert into TMEO, a substance that recent research links to increased atherosclerosis and heart disease. The American Heart Association recommends that if you eat red meat, choose the leanest cuts possible, limit portion sizes to 3 ounces, which is about the size of a deck of cards, and consume it no more than twice a week. Compare this to what many people actually eat: a 12-ounce steak at a restaurant or hamburgers several times a week. Large studies following women over decades consistently show that those who eat red meat daily have significantly higher rates of heart disease than those who eat it occasionally or not at all. What about the argument that humans have always eaten meat? It's true, but the meat your grandparents ate was very different from today's meat. It came from animals that moved around and ate grass, resulting in leaner meat with a different fat profile. Today's commercially raised beef is much fattier. Plus, people used to eat much smaller portions of meat, often as a flavoring in dishes rather than as the centerpiece of every meal. Doctors specializing in preventive cardiology suggest thinking of meat as a side dish rather than the main event. A practical example: Dorothy, 74 years old, grew up eating meat with every dinner and saw no reason to change. But after a mild heart attack, her cardiologist strongly urged her to reduce red meat consumption. She was resistant until her daughter helped her explore alternatives. They discovered that grilled salmon could be just as satisfying as steak when well seasoned. Chicken thighs, though poultry, gave her that richer meat taste she craved. She learned to make hearty bean stews that were filling and delicious. She didn't eliminate red meat completely, but reduced it to once a week or less, choosing sirloin instead of ribeye, and found her cholesterol levels improved significantly. Better alternatives include fish, especially fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, and sardines that contain omega-3 fatty acids proven to protect the heart. Skinless chicken and turkey are excellent lean protein sources. Plant-based proteins like beans, lentils, and tofu are increasingly recognized by cardiologists as heart-healthy options. If you do eat red meat, choose grass-fed when possible. Select the leanest cuts, trim visible fat, and use cooking methods like grilling or broiling that allow fat to drip away. The 10th and final food on our list is something many women don't realize is problematic: artificially sweetened diet drinks and foods. You might be thinking, wait, didn't we just talk about avoiding sugar? Yes, but artificial sweeteners aren't the solution cardiologists recommend for senior women. Recent research has raised serious concerns about artificial sweeteners and heart health. A large French study published in 2022 followed over 100,000 people and found that those who consumed artificial sweeteners had higher rates of cardiovascular disease than those who consumed neither artificial sweeteners nor sugar. How can this be? Scientists are still working to understand all the mechanisms, but several factors appear to be at play. First, artificial sweeteners may alter the gut bacteria in ways that affect metabolism and inflammation. Second, some studies suggest they may actually increase sugar cravings and lead to overeating. Third, research indicates they might affect how the body processes real sugar when it's consumed. Fourth, some artificial sweeteners have been linked to changes in blood sugar regulation, even though they don't contain sugar themselves. The American Heart Association and American Diabetes Association issued a joint statement saying that while artificial sweeteners may help some people reduce calorie and sugar intake in the short term, there isn't enough evidence to prove long-term cardiovascular safety, especially for older adults. Medical experts emphasize that water should be the primary beverage, not diet sodas or artificially sweetened drinks. Here's a telling example. Susan, 68 years old, thought she was being healthy by drinking 4 diet sodas a day. Instead of regular soda, she used artificial sweeteners in her coffee and ate sugar-free cookies. But she still craved sweet things constantly and couldn't lose weight. Her doctor explained that by constantly exposing her taste buds to intense sweetness, even artificial, she was maintaining her sweet tooth. He suggested she gradually reduce all intense sweeteners, artificial or real. She switched to flavored sparkling water, unsweetened iced tea with lemon, and coffee with just a splash of milk. The first 2 weeks were challenging, but after a month, she found her cravings for sweets had dramatically decreased, and foods with natural sugars like fruit tasted much sweeter and more satisfying. What should you do instead? The best approach is to gradually retrain your palate to enjoy foods that are less sweet overall. Drink water as your main beverage. Jazz it up with slices of cucumber, lemon, lime, or fresh berries if you want flavor. Choose unsweetened beverages and add small amounts of real sweetener if needed. Then gradually reduce it. Herbal teas come in naturally sweet flavors like cinnamon or peppermint. If you must use a sweetener occasionally, a small amount of real sugar or honey is likely better than artificial alternatives. But the ultimate goal should be reducing sweetness in general. Now that we've covered all 10 foods, let's talk about the big picture. Making these changes might seem overwhelming at first, especially if several of these foods are regular parts of your diet. But remember, you don't have to change everything overnight. Start with 1 or 2 swaps that seem most doable to you. Maybe this week, you replace processed meats with natural proteins. Next week, you switch to whole grain bread. The following week, you start reading sodium labels and choosing lower sodium options. Small changes add up to major health improvements over time. Medical research consistently shows that dietary changes can have profound effects on heart health, often rivaling the benefits of medications. A study from Johns Hopkins Medicine found that women who made significant dietary improvements reduced their heart disease risk by 35% within just 1 year. Your heart is resilient and can benefit from positive changes at any age. Every healthy meal is a gift you're giving to your cardiovascular system. Remember, this isn't about perfection. If you have a slice of birthday cake or enjoy some fried chicken at a family gathering, that's absolutely fine. What matters is your overall pattern of eating day after day, week after week. Aim for progress, not perfection. Celebrate the healthy choices you make rather than beating yourself up over occasional indulgences. And always work with your healthcare team. They can provide personalized guidance based on your specific health conditions, medications, and needs. If you found this information valuable, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more practical health advice designed specifically for you. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Which of these 10 foods do you think will be hardest for you to reduce? And which healthy swap are you most excited to try? Your experiences might help other viewers who are on the same journey. And if you want to learn more about protecting your heart health, check out our video on the best foods to eat for a healthy heart, where we discuss all the delicious, nutritious options you should be including in your diet. Taking care of your heart through smart food choices is one of the most powerful things you can do to maintain your independence, energy, and quality of life for years to come. You deserve to feel your best, and with the wisdom and experience you've gained over the years, you have everything you need to make these positive changes